short story. It's called I Stop the World, You Melt Alone. Everything had started to suck. After work, I went to the grocery store looking for something bacon-flavored to mainline during Law and Order. The devil met me in aisle 6, condiments. He was tall with sideburns and mirrored Ray-Bans and a London Calling tour shirt. Why me, I asked. 1,000 generations have lived and died, he said. The Punic Wars fought and lost. Carthage raised and Carthage burned, just so I could be right here, right now, about to ask you a favor. A woman came around the corner, her cart full of vegan slop. The devil went transparent and she pushed right through him. Her child got a bloody nose and began to scream. The manager, a big guy with a mustache, rolled up his sleeves and started toward us. Got a split, the devil said, disappearing in a curl of smoke. The next day, Wendy walked into my office with bankruptcy papers. She lingered by the door, hipless in her sensible skirt. I'd hired her right out of high school. I'd paid for her braces. Your severance will come in the mail, I said quietly. Anthrax comes in the mail, she answered, packing her unicorns in picture frames and fuzzy pens before slamming the door. That night I killed myself. Twice. Actually 4 times. Gun, oven, pills, razor. After each attempt, the devil perched on the bedpost shaking his head. I could give a fuck about your soul. And there's no golden fiddle to lay at your feet. There isn't even a hell. I nodded. No heaven then either? Actually, yeah, but it's got velvet ropes and a $10 cover. It's run by the Germans. Jackboot Germans or pointy glasses Germans? Is there a difference, he asked? Listen, just tell me what you want. A fly buzzed over our heads. The devil's tongue lassoed out, a 3-foot cord. There was a snap and crackle of wings. He chewed pensively. First, call me Kenny. Devil so Salem. What do you want, Kenny? Your wife, 3 times a week, in the tool shed. I looked over at June, snoring faintly. A small mustache of perspiration beaded on her upper lip. We were married in Niagara Falls, 1962. 38 years of flipping pancakes and flipping channels, lying in each other's arms, lazy Sundays watering the lawn, a cigar in my teeth as she waved from the kitchen window. Done, I said. The devil signed something that looked like a bar napkin with something that looked like a bloody feather. Any questions? Yeah, free will, yes or no? Sneeze, he said. I didn't. But was it by choice? Or had that non-sneeze been destined not to happen long before my teenage father first discovered himself in his teenage bathroom, closing his eyes and tugging out a rope of DNA that was not to be me into a Kleenex that was not to be my mother, a million whip-tailed gametes crusting into non-existence in a house doomed to be bombed flat by the end of the war. Kenny opened his trench coat. Dozens of knives, watches, and shrunken baby heads hung in the lining. There's nothing free, he said, and Will is the kid from Lost in Space. Either way, I figure you for a Rolex. Around noon, a courier arrived. Papers were set on my desk. Reacquisition of the building, paid in full. Wendy was back. The phone rang and she patched it through. It was Dick Max, president of Enormo Wireless, my former partner. We'd had a falling out over anytime minutes. You signed, he said. Excuse me? You made the deal, didn't you, you fat fuck? Big boned, I said. Genetic disposition. You think he didn't ask me? What, you never heard of Faust? You're gonna be floating around in purgatory forever, smart guy. You and a billion unbaptized foreskins. It'll be like a calamari convention. Don't forget to bring your soul and some limes. Click. When I got home, June lay on a fur blanket spread on the kitchen floor, completely nude. I hadn't seen her nude in 15 years. Her breasts were absurdly swollen, a low-level growling coming from her pores like a billion microscopic mouths. She She smiled, lipstick in her teeth, and looked every inch, head to toe, blonde drapes to brown carpet, floridly schizophrenic. Where's dinner, I asked. She pulled me down with iron toes, flung away my belt, and proceeded to have me like a Chinese buffet, like a tight Peking duck, like a salted bowl of MSG dicks. Check, please, I whined. She laughed and then came back for thirds. That night, covered with scratches and welts and incisor prints, I couldn't sleep. Hi, the devil said, cleaning his nails with an icicle. I know how this works, I told him. I've read Dickens. You're here to spring some clever twist so the audience can laugh at how I pay for it in the end. In the end is an apt choice of words, he said. Your wife is a bore, no challenge. From now on, it's you in the tool shed. I got a whiff of locker room, of dirty foot and rubber pants and skin bracer. Every Tuesday at noon, he said, and bring some butter. A week later, we flew to Vegas. The plane was painted bright red. You don't need a seatbelt, genius, Kenny laughed. I lifted buckle. Partly because I was superstitious, and partly because I could see into the cockpit. The pilot was a rhesus monkey with a shaved head crossed with raw lab incisions. A trio of 13-year-old boys gossiped in Thai while waxing Kenny's tail. The stewardess was Nancy Reagan. She brought me a Bloody Mary in a tall glass. An olive tumbled to the floor. I squashed it with my loafer, thinking for a second, like a Grimm's fairy tale, it might stop her heart. It didn't. When I refused the drink, she leaned her head to one side and poured it back into a crack in her neck. Kenny snorted lines of borax with a rolled-up Magna Carta as the plane skidded on the runway. Nancy folded herself into an overhead compartment, giving me a wink before closing the door. We spent the weekend playing baccarat at $500,000 a hand. By Sunday afternoon, I owned 2 casinos, a yacht, Siegfried, and a majority interest in Roy. It got so boring, I stopped counting my chips. I want to speak to God, I said. The devil shrugged and closed his eyes. When he opened them, he was slightly different. Somehow a fraction less Kenny. It might have been the lipstick. God? I asked. Yes, my son. I am in need of your mercy and forgiveness. He laughed. My body is but a pearlescent deli counter. Verily, you must take a gold number and waiteth in line, as I am still working through my way through low and many moneylenders and centurions. Is there any way to fast-track this process? Let's play a game, he said, twirling his nose ring. If you can answer 2 questions, I'll not only solve your problems, but I'll give you a boy to wax your tail. But I don't have a tail, I said. Here we go. What does laser stand for? Oh. I closed my eyes. It was gratingly obvious. Light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation? Correct, God said, petulantly, stomping his foot, the heel snapping off his hemp Doc Marten. How about scuba? Self-contained, underwater, breathing attachment? God signal touchdown. Apparatus, motherfucker, I win. Everything went black. And then Kenny and I were back in the tool shed. He was naked. I was naked. His penis had an LED display that kept blinking. The intruder. What is that? I asked. He gave himself a good shake, and it became a miniature man, erect, arms at its side like an Oscar statuette. Except it wasn't an award, and it wasn't Oscar. It was me. The devil was gonna fuck me with me. The statuette inhaled deeply, holding its nose. Kenny grinned, like a dog humping the nylons of a woman whose legs smelled like a mixture of beef, shit, and another dog. "Let's do this thing," he said. He was insane. I could see that now. But what kind of fool expects a lucid devil? Okay, I'll do whatever you want, I said. I'll give it all back, but after that, I'm out. Done, he said. The next morning, I was in the office. Eviction notice tagged to the door. I stood as they repossessed my chair. My right cheek was swollen where Wendy hit me with a stapler. June declared she'd found a new path and stormed into the house, roaring away in a Jeep, a blocky, heavily flanneled woman at the wheel. When the workmen were leaving, one of them turned. It was Kenny. "Now," he said. A box appeared, lowered from the ceiling on a fleshy cable, like the control for a video game, except it was big and pink and moist and pulsed. A single red button in its center breathed in and out. "Now," the devil shouted again. I pressed the button. There was an odd blur, a loss of focus. When things cleared, I was alone. So I walked down to the deli for a sandwich, staring at the reflection of St. Paul's Cathedral on the side of the Frogurt machine. It took a while before I noticed, instead of a marble cross, the church was topped with an enormous gleaming cell phone. Across the street was a mosque. The minaret was shaped like a Bluetooth headset. Even the synagogue seemed to be on vibrate. The woman in front of me placed a call. So did the woman behind. So did the guy at the register and the guy slicing ham. Every car, they were dialing. Every bus, every passenger. People on the sidewalk, people in stores, bums laying in the park. All of them talking. A steady noise filled the air. At first it was just a buzz, getting vacuously louder. Then it was the water pulling back from the beach before a tsunami, fish flopping desperately on the exposed seabed. It was a clang, and then a mallet, and then a battalion of pounded nails. It was kicked glass and atomized metal and rendered bone. I held my ears and lowered to my knees. Their lips weren't moving, mouths open, cheeks acting like a funnel, human trumpets, the vibration of marrow, a sour, cruel collective buzz that swooped in fists and force in half steps. A noise that rose into the blackened sky like the onset of a billion text-fatted locusts. An endless array of signals and digits, pounds and stars and nines, sixes and threes and zeros, combinations that would finally, ultimately, and rapturously gather us up and then redial us all.
We're all stand to judge, but the devil's awaiting with Christ like a son. When the look comes your way, you best say it was I, for the reasons you hold.